Afternoon, everyone. I call to order this Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, November 16th, and we will start with a land acknowledgement, and I'll call upon Ms. Brown.
Hello, can you hear me? So thank you for this opportunity to do a land acknowledgement on the land that I work, live, and play on. So as I stand here, I can feel the ground under my feet, and I acknowledge that many people have stood on this ground before me, and many will stand after me. I know that I cannot truly own this space and that I'm standing on. I can only appreciate that I'm able to be here right now. I know at this moment I'm responsible for this space, and I must care for this space. I recognize that this space has history, and that this space is on the traditional territories of the Treaty 7 nations. And I acknowledge that we are all treaty people, and that I am a treaty person. I commit to the work of reconciliation by honoring all life and by sharing this space in friendship and with all people. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to the agenda for today's meeting. Look to the clerk to see if there's any changes that I should be aware of. No? In that case, I'll move approval of the agenda for the November 16th, 2021 Committee of the Whole meeting. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Now, as our delegation is here now, so we will now move to a delegation from Alta Link.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, councillors. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Well, thank you. My name is John Grove. I'm the Municipal and Community Relations Manager for Alta Link. And with me today is Stephen Day. He is the Senior Right-of-Way Planner. And I do have a presentation. Do you have it?
Yes, we have a presentation in our agenda package. Will we have an opportunity to see them at all on the screen?
Thank you. You can turn on your camera if you wish to, Mr. Grove. And I have your presentation, but I wasn't prepared to show it. Do you need me to show it for you?
That'd be wonderful if you'd show it for me.
Okay, I'm just going to need a couple of minutes for that.
Great. So we'll just hold on a second, and we'll wait for the clerk to advise of the agenda being up. Where are you two calling in from today?
Well, we're both in Calgary.
Excellent.
Both from home. Getting old, isn't it?
Okay, we're having some trouble picking up your voice. It keeps cutting out there.
I'm sorry. I have had some challenges. Is that better?
Yes.
No. Oh, good. No, both Stephen and I are working from home. We've been out of the office since last November, so over a year now, and we're not going back to the office until after the new year, I think mid-January.
Well, it looks like you're out on the power line, so.
Yes, well, you know, the wonderful things you can do with virtual meetings.
Okay, so we're ready to go now with your presentation, so please proceed.
All right, well, I'll just start with a little bit of background. We could go to the second slide. And I'd better follow along here. Alta Link service area is the dark blue. And it's interesting, it's slightly out of proportion. We're missing two chunks out of this east and central east part of the province, but we do service 85% of Albertans with our needs, and that really includes Calgary, Edmonton, Lethbridge, Banff, Medicine Hat. The light blue service area is ATCO's, and Alta Link is owned by Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett. group of companies. Next slide, please.
All right, so we're just waiting for the slides to come up here.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. And here we go. Okay, so
Okay.
can you see that, sir?
Yes, I can.
Great. Is that the slide you'd like?
That's the slide I'd like.
Okay, great.
So the electric industry is interesting, and it's because it's regulated. So I'm going to just quickly go through who the players in the industry are. On the upper left-hand side, we have the Alberta Electric System Operator, or AESO. They are the planners of the system. They are the ones that direct AltaLink and/or ATCO to build transmission lines, particularly in AltaLink's case, transmission only, from point A to point B. And this is to connect generation to the load or the demand areas. They are the planner. They do update a 20-year plan every 2 years. So it's constantly being looked at and refreshed. On the upper right-hand side, the Alberta Utilities Commission is the regulator of the industry. The industry has a regulator because, like every other monopoly, the regulator eliminates the ability for the companies to take advantage of that monopoly. So everything we do, from our budgets, our payroll, our construction, the after construction, is reviewed by the regulator through a series of public hearings. That also includes when we build new lines, that regulator approves, can change our applications, or can deny them. And they are, the Alberta Utilities Commission is under the purview of the Department of Energy, Province of Alberta. So when you get asked in the coffee shop about how people go about intervening or staying in the loop and providing input through a process of approvals, it is through the Alberta Utilities Commission and the provincial arm. On the lower left-hand side, we have transmission facility owners. Transmission of electricity is moving large volumes of power over larger distances. The transmission lines stop in a substation, and at that substation, the power is divided up into smaller units and goes down the side roads to the houses, the businesses, the hospitals, those kind of things. So transmission moves large power to substations. Substations, like a wall plug-in, divides it out and goes to the various user groups. Distribution facility owners on the right-hand side, like Fortis, used to be TransAlta, Rural Electrification Association, are the wires that bring that small power from the substation to your home, to your office, to your facility. And I think it's kind of critical to understand how all these different players interconnect. So if we could have the next slide, please. We'll see who the users or consumers of electricity are in Alberta. Industry consumes or uses about 61%. Those are large industrial plants, manufacturing facilities, maybe some very large food processing, oil and gas groups, and such. Commercial consumption is about 18%, and commercial would be anybody who could pass off the cost of electricity in their goods sold. So that would include the coffee shop, but it would also include schools, hospitals, office buildings, your building facility, for example. Residential consumption is about 13% of all the power in Alberta, while farms and ranches are about 3%. Line losses account for about 5% of the power generated. So as electricity moves down a transmission line, it creates heat in the wire, and that heat consumes electricity. So the further the generators are away from the ultimate user, the more line loss there is. About 5% of generated electricity in Alberta goes up in heat. Next slide, please. So when we look at a visual diagram of electricity in Alberta, on the far left we have the power generators. Wind, natural gas, coal, much less than it was 10 years ago. We're down to about 2,500 megawatts of coal capacity in generation, and that's down from about 6,000 5 years ago. Wind, interestingly enough, up from about 200 to about 2,000 megawatts, while gas is the mainstay of the electricity that's generated in Alberta. Hydro in Alberta, and particularly southern Alberta, is relatively small. So all the power that's generated goes into a substation, and it gets ramped up or the voltage increases. The power generators are not regulated. They are approved through the Alberta Utilities Commission, but they are competitive, and the price of electricity is determined by their providing power and bidding it into a stacked system. In other words, if you are a natural gas generator, you would offer your generation at pick number $50 a megawatt, and you might only provide 2/3 of your power there. You might provide another 10% at $60 a megawatt, and you might provide the last portion, or 30% of your power generation, at 120 megawatts. The price that you see on your electric bill is determined by the last or most expensive megawatt that is consumed or required to meet demand. So if the last megawatt is $62 a megawatt, everybody gets paid $62 a megawatt that provided power. As you can appreciate, wind and solar can't determine a day ahead, let alone an hour ahead, how much power they'll have available. So they are a price taker. They have a free roll into the system, and they get whatever the price is. And in fact, they serve as reducing the price of power. Because they don't bid in, they eliminate the higher price power. Is that clear as mud?
You bet.
Okay. So the power goes into a substation, the blue one on the left, and those blue ones, or the blue wires, are the transmission wires. We are regulated. All we do is move the power from the generation to another substation, very much like a pipeline would do. We get paid based on the capital cost of those transmission lines and towers of our assets, as though it were a 30-year mortgage. So we get a fixed or regulated rate of return. That rate of return is determined by the Alberta Utilities Commission and is adjusted periodically. The power that we transmit goes into a gold substation, gets divided out on distribution wires, and those distribution wires go to the homes and businesses. The distribution system is regulated as well, so it's got a fixed rate of return. The retailers on the far right are deregulated. In other words, they buy power in large blocks from the generators and can mark it up however much they feel their customers will pay. So that's a schematic of how power moves from generation to consumers and how everybody gets paid on the way by. Next slide, please. Please feel free, if you have any questions, to jump in.
Thank you.
This map shows the blue lines are AltaLink's transmission lines. And as you can see, they are doubled up or in circles or loops. And what that does is provide reliability to the system. If one line goes out, there's still power coming to the substation, and that's where the blue lines join. And it means that there is not a power outage. And what's of note here is on the left-hand side, 54L and 551L in the ID number 9 Banff, and just on the west end of Canmore are radial lines. There is no loop. So
Are you still there? Yep.
Give him a half minute there, and if he doesn't, I'll carry on.
Thank you. Yeah, are you able to test your mic? Stephen?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you bet.
And excuse me, I just wanted to jump in and give you a time check. You are at 15 minutes.
Thank you very much. So I'll continue on. So like John was saying, there is no other alternate source of power going from, in terms of transmission, from 54L into Banff. So we call that a radial line. So we cannot take a long-term outage on that line because it would put Banff in the dark. I think that, so that you can generally see the Canmore area and the 54L line where it's kind of starting off connected to the 750 or 4L line at the town of Canmore substation. So next slide, please. So I'll introduce the 54L rebuild project. You can see on your map here, this is the outline of the town of Canmore in pink. The green area is Banff National Park. And the particular chunk of line we're talking about, 54L, that we're rebuilding outside the Banff National Park, goes from the Canmore substation, which is located just off of Elk Run Boulevard. You'll see it just to the right of the Highway 1 symbol there. And it follows along Elk Run Boulevard, and then through to Harvey Heights, and then to the Banff Park boundary. And next slide, please. So the 54L line, the existing line, is a wooden pole line. It has monopoles, much like the one on the left, and H-frame structures, much like the one on the right. We are intending to rebuild a new line, which is a 138 kilovolt line, back to monopoles and with occasional H-frames where required. And the idea behind that is to stay within the existing right-of-way of the 54L line. And with monopoles, we can maintain the existing right-of-way without widening it. And then for a few structures where required, again, we'll go with H-frames where we need for angles and things like that. See what else. You'll see that the type of steel structure we're using does not have a shield wire. Normally, most of our lines will have a shield wire running on top, which makes the structure taller. In this case, the existing line does not have a shield wire, and we're just going to rebuild without a shield wire. We're also using a weathered steel look, so you'll see it's a darker look instead of the shiny galvanized steel. And generally in forested environments, we find people find the viewing of these structures easier to deal with than with the shiny steel structures. See anything else? So the height of the structures, they will be taller. The reason why they're going to be taller is we've got new clearance standards compared to when the line was originally built in 1943. We also have it's a balance between the distance between the spans. So if you have longer spans, generally you need a taller structure. And then we also have trees that are adjacent to our right-of-way. So in this forested environment, we want to keep the line as reasonably tall as possible because that minimizes the number of trees that we need to consider to remove adjacent to the line when we're rebuilding it. And that's one of the major features of this project is we're going to look at all the trees that are adjacent to the right-of-way and decide if they're hazard trees which need to be felled immediately or danger trees which we need to either remove or mitigate to prevent them being a future danger to that line. Okay, next slide, please.
Just 1 second, please. I think we have a question.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, I stopped. Stopped before I said it out loud.
Councillor Faubert.
Thank you for the presentation. When you're doing that vegetation management, are you removing the trees that you're bringing down, or are you leaving them on site just to like go back to nature?
So that'll be dependent on the landowner, so Crown land versus private land, and what the agreements are with those landowners. Generally, we'll remove a lot of the debris and the trees off site because we don't want to leave too much of what would be fuel loading on those sites.
Thanks. And one other question. I don't know if this is the best place to ask it, but you were showing there's structures there. Have you, in what circumstances would you consider, or are there any circumstances where you'd consider burying the line?
So generally that topic does come up because people like the idea of not seeing the lines. We would consider burying lines. However, if we're going to do that, the cost is significantly more than leaving the lines overhead. So generally in the range of about 10 times more for the project. So those additional costs, because we're doing this on the behalf of the ratepayers, we would ask the stakeholder to put up the remaining portion of the cost to underground the line.
Right. And are there ever situations where you have to bury the line?
We do have some lines underground. So we also have that one in Three Sisters. Now that was something that the Three Sisters had come to Alta asking for that to be buried. We have some lines that go underneath highways or roads where there's just so much stuff going on in the air. It's just better to underground that line. But again, it's a fairly expensive process, so we don't do it unless there's a sort of a need to do it or somebody wants to pay for that.
Yeah, so I was approached by a resident on the Elk Run side there, and so there's that loop where it comes off of the highway, going parallel with the highway, and it goes up Benchlands and then down Elk Run. What would that stretch? I mean, do you have a ballpark figure? What would that stretch cost to replace? Not burying it, but just to replace that stretch.
So we generally are accounting for about $150,000 per 100 meters.
Okay. And so to bury it, it would be 1.5 million per 100 meters, approximately.
That's what we've estimated. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. So, yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, I'll just give you a quick rundown on the siting process. So all of our work, when AltaLink doesn't have authority to just go ahead and do what it wants with the lines. Everything we do is approved by the Alberta Utilities Commission when we want to change or alter or build something new. So we have a preliminary siting process, or conceptual we started with, and first thing we looked at is the best place to rebuild the 54L line in the existing right-of-way. We had a look at some rough ideas of what other alternates could happen, but when we looked at those, we didn't see anything that popped out as being overall less impact than just rebuilding on the existing right-of-way. Of course, in a forested area or an area where it's already built up, anything you do different with the line is going to have new stakeholders affected, or you'll be doing new clearing for the right-of-way. And then we have a preliminary stage. So we're just out with that recently. We usually do initial planning, determining what we can or can't do. Does the line fit in the right-of-way? And in this case, we determined we could do that with the monopoles. And so we went out and did all our work, put some mapping and newsletters out to the public, and that kind of finalizes the preliminary stage. So now we're into the detailed stage. So what we do is we talk to all the stakeholders along the route. We do a whole bunch of surveys and field work and engineering to kind of determine that our plan's going to work, and then we'll take any feedback from stakeholders to try and do the best locations for structures and the line itself, and come up with a plan that we then submit to, or application we submit to the Alberta Utilities Commission, called a facility application, and they're the ones that determine whether or not they'll approve that rebuild, and as we proposed, and if there's any other things that they suggest that we should go do for further work. If there's people that are objecting to this, then they can go to the Alberta Utilities Commission and be heard. And John, are you back on? Nope, he's still missing in action.
Looks like you're solo.
Looks like we're making it up, so I'll make this up as we go.
Okay.
So the consultation process, we do talk to every stakeholder that's adjacent to the route all the way along. And if there's any impacts on their lands, we will negotiate individual agreements with each one of those stakeholders. And then if there's people within a certain distance, we'll notify them about the project, and if they have any interest, they can definitely come and talk to our people, and we'll hear their concerns and try and address them as best we can.
So does that include if a line goes very close to an existing building, that the residents of that building would be notified of the process and where they can provide input?
Definitely, yeah. And we basically chase those people down to get either we don't want to talk to you, AltaLink, or here's our concerns and how can you address them, and we will address them as best we can.
Great, thank you.
Okay, let's see. I think we can carry on to the next slide. Has anyone got any other questions about the consultation?
No? Please proceed.
Yeah, and we have provided newsletters and maps to all the stakeholders, and there's a website that we've identified that people can go get more information about the project as it goes along. Okay, so who we talk to: the affected landowners, First Nations, stakeholder groups, environmental groups, local, provincial government, federal government where required in case of the parks, and economic development agencies. Next slide, please. So I talked a little bit about how we identify routes, but some of the factors we consider, of course, is, in this case, there was an existing route, but we did look at other alternatives. Agriculture areas, which aren't a big concern in this area, high residential density, which is a concern here, which is one of the reasons if we did try to move the line, chances are we're going to bother more people by doing that. Environmental areas, so there's a lot of wildlife corridors and things like that that we'll be working with the town of Canmore about to see as we either plan or construct that we best manage that. We're working on that in the 113L line right now that's in the Three Sisters area. Existing infrastructure, so we've got all kinds of stuff that's buried in the ground that we have to make sure that our poles, that the electrical effects and things like that are going to working with them, and we got reasonable proximities to all those other existing infrastructure in the ground, or that we're moving them as a part of our project. And then sometimes we have other concerns with future interconnections to other transmission developments, and distribution lines may be something that we consider as well in this case.
Right.
Go ahead.
So there are some lands that are near the Palliser area of town, right along Highway 1, that are future development for affordable housing, some employee housing for Silvertip. And do I understand correctly that that the line will probably dip down a little bit closer to the highway there to impact those lands as little as possible?
So, so right now we do have the existing right-of-way, which does bisect those properties and makes it rather difficult to develop those properties. Yep. So we certainly understand that. There is potential to relocate a portion of that line to to improve the development potential of those areas. And so, yeah, we'll work with the town of Canmore and Stone Creek to identify what might be possible there.
Great. So that's on the radar.
It is on the radar, yes.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on route identification?
Nope.
Next slide, please. Okay, so our project set schedule right now, we're in the process. We put all the information out to stakeholders, and we're doing a bunch of field work and engineering, and talking to people where they've got some different ideas of what could potentially happen. We're trying to identify the danger trees with all the stakeholders and trying to address their concerns about the trees, because people have different values for trees. So we want to work with them as much as we can, and while making the line as safe as possible for the next 20 plus years. We'll file with the Alberta Utilities Commission, slated for May of 2022. That'll be subject, of course, if we've got a bunch of extra work that ends up happening along the way, or other stakeholder issues to address that may carry on. Construction start is intended in 2023. Initially, you'll probably see a bunch of vegetation control work, that kind of stuff that would happen initially to get that stuff out of the way, so that then the line construction could follow afterwards. And we anticipate the construction being completed by 2024. Of course, the remaining portion of the 54 line from the Banff Park boundary into Banff is a separate project that we'll be working with Banff Park on in the future. Next slide, please. So AltaLink has a pledge to the customers, and what we've told them is we're going to keep our costs flat for 5. Let's see, so we renegotiated the rates with our customers for 2017, 2018 to not increase through to 2023. The idea being, of course, that things have been pretty tough for a lot of people in Alberta over the last bunch of years, so we wanted to maintain our costs and keep them as flat as possible. Any questions?
I just had a question around, right now is a feedback period, and from your materials, do I gather that is the best way for residents, if they have any comments, to go to altalink.ca/project feedback?
Sure, yeah, they can do that, or if they've already got a package or what have you, they may have someone contacting them already.
Right.
But if they're not directly adjacent, they can, just get a hold of that and we'll get back to them.
Great, thank you. I see no other
questions. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No, I don't see any other questions.
Okay, John, are you with us yet? Oh, he got taken right out. There you go. So there's some contact information for AltaLink, and our toll-free number, and you have John's email address and myself's. If you've got any questions in terms of where the line's going and any concerns along the line, please do get in touch with me regarding the 54L project specifically. And if you've got any general AltaLink type questions, go ahead and get in touch with John Grove there, and he can help you out with those. Any further questions?
Yes. I have a question. Thank you, Mr. Day. In the report, it says the existing structures are approximately 15 to 20 meters tall, but the proposed replacement structures would be up to 30 meters in height. What's the need for those additional 10 meters in height? And is this, and in terms of approximations, are we talking every single pole is going to be another 10 meters tall?
So it just, again, it really depends on the structures and where they are located and how long the span is. And that the 30-meter tall, the big, tall ones are most likely going to be at the crossings for something like the Cougar Creek, for example. Those kind of ones where we got a big, long span and we're crossing. And again, we're trying to do a balance between the length of the spans, because you try to minimize your structures as much as possible when you're engineering. But in the case of Canmore, we also want to minimize the number of trees that we're having to remove. So you want to keep the lines as tall as possible. But at the same time, we don't want to have big giant structures all the way along. So we're kind of trying to achieve a balance as we go along in Canmore. So I can't give you a great answer on that, but they won't all be 30 meters. So I think 30 meters are going to be the exceptional tall ones where we do a big long span and we're crossing something.
Would that be a detail that would be available when you had more finalized engineering plans and drawings?
Yeah, we've got some draft engineering plans right now. So if someone has concerns about a specific structure, we can get back to them and kind of give them an idea what general range it's in right now.
It might be good to know kind of overall in terms of the project, how many of the poles are going to be are taller and what locations they might be in. I'm just predicting that viewscapes might become an important value for our residents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in this case, again, there is an existing line in place, so it's going to look a lot similar as it had before. Some of the lines will be taller. The structures are going to be a bit darker with the new weathered steel look. And in some cases, like along Elk Run Boulevard, we are going to request Fortis to underground along there. Right now they're underbuilt in our structure, so we'll take the 3 Fortis lines that are the lower ones and we'll bury them in the ground. So it'll just be the 3 AltaLink lines that'll be up in the air.
Good. Thanks for that. I'm looking to council to see if there are any other questions. And seeing none, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Day, for stepping in when there was a technical difficulty, and please pass along our thanks also to Mr. Grove and for joining us today and providing your presentation.
Well, thank you very much for giving us time to present this to you, and if you do have any more questions or concerns, please do relate them to us.
Great. Thank you. Have a good day.
You have a good one too.
Thank you. I just rolled in to the very end of the meeting, and I really apologize about the technical challenges. Thank you, Canmore, and have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Grove, and yo, Mr. Day, he stepped in and did a fine job.
Well, of course.
I think that's 2 beer at least.
Right on. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, we'll now move to item C, approval of the minutes of the September 21st, 2021 Committee of the Whole meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, then I will move approval of the minutes of the September 21st, 2021 Committee of the Whole as presented. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And we'll move to staff reports. Item D, the Safe Park 2021 program pilot. Ms. Eichelboom, it's good to see you. You too. Okay. While you are presenting, if you're comfortable, you can remove your mask.
I will,
okay.
yes, thank Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so you can't see it. Why can't you see it? Does anyone know what I have to do here?
I think
Make
it
this
might
work?
still be with the previous Zoom.
I have this. I have this on the desktop here. Awesome.
By the way, when Ms. Dinaj had gave the time check, that really freaked me out. I'm sure it wasn't the only one, though. Where does this voice come from?
So thank you for the tech geniuses out there that got my slide working. Woohoo! All right, good afternoon, Mayor and members of Council. It's lovely to see you all here. And my name's Kayla. So today I'll be presenting an update on the 2021 Safe Park Program pilot. I work part-time in the Community Social Development Department, or CSD for short, and I work as a housing evaluator. I'll be happy to take any questions at the end of the presentation, and thank you so much for the time to present today. Okay, so in today's presentation, I'll be providing an overview of the history leading to the 2021 Safe Park pilot, as well as some background of my work to date as a housing evaluator. I'll describe what the 2021 Safe Park program looked like, its outcomes, and its challenges. And finally, I will cover some recommended next steps. In 2018, the population of individuals residing in their vehicle increased significantly, especially in the municipal lot behind Save-On Foods and beside Elevation Place, an area which was informally dubbed Canmore. After monitoring the lot in 2018, Council approved parking restrictions that prohibited parking from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the municipal lot. These restrictions, implemented in spring of 2019, were put in place to ensure that vehicles parked in the municipal lot abide by the Provincial Traffic Safety Act, which requires vehicles to move every 36 hours. In 2019, Council also approved a seasonal outreach worker to collect demographic information and research potential programs. This research showed that approximately 38 individuals living in their vehicles were seasonally employed in the Bow Valley at that time. This represented about 5% of our seasonal workforce that year. Based on interviews, the median time that individuals resided in their vehicle was 75 days, and the most common reasons for living in a vehicle included travel, saving money, and being unable to afford rent. In February 2020, based on research presented to Council, the Safe Park pilot was approved for that year. 1 month later, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic, and the 2020 pilot was subsequently canceled due to changing community needs. After the pandemic was declared, Community Social Development refocused service delivery to support our municipal pandemic response. Housing was one of the key areas of need identified by CSD, and I was brought on as a housing evaluator to research and develop programs that support those most impacted by the pandemic. Some of my work to date has included determining what public spaces could be accessed by vulnerable populations during lockdowns, operating a warming center, creating an emergency isolation plan for those who could not isolate at home, reviewing homelessness support models in rural and resort-based communities, assessing local emergency housing needs, and collaborating with community partners to launch and evaluate the REST program, which is Canmore's emergency map program, meeting regularly with community housing and service partners and supporting a needs assessment survey, and launching and evaluating a COVID-modified Safe Park program pilot in 2021. After the second pandemic wave in March 2021, CSD began to pivot service delivery from response to recovery. It was anticipated that active COVID-19 cases would remain low and that additional housing supports would be needed for our seasonal workforce. In April 2021, Council approved a COVID-19 modified Safe Park pilot. So the Safe Park program was piloted this year between June 15th and September 30th, and it included 20 overnight parking spaces. The program had a fee of $10 per night, an amount which was based on the 2019 research report. A security company was contracted to ensure that the space was safe for participants, only used by participants, and that the area was monitored. Reports were sent to bylaw services and Safe Park program staff. We worked with public health to create a program that adhered to local health directives to keep participants safe. There was a self-isolation procedure, a COVID-19 safety acknowledgement, vehicle spacing requirements, and participants were also assigned to one lot for the entire duration of the program to limit contacts. Participants had to meet eligibility requirements, including employment of minimum 20 hours per week in the Bow Valley, valid driver's license, vehicle registration and insurance, an operational vehicle that fit into a standard parking stall, a signed program responsibility agreement, and finally, a COVID-19 safety acknowledgement, which outlined that it was each participant's responsibility to stay up to date with provincial restrictions and follow all public health recommendations when in the program area. Throughout the program, we collected data related to 3 main outcomes. The first outcome we wanted to see was that the program met a community need, and this was measured by demand and eligibility. There were 17 inquiries to the program and 7 formal applications through the online application system, and fewer than 5 eligible participants registered for the program. There were several applicants who decided not to proceed with their registration despite being eligible. Reasons for declining included applicant found alternate accommodations, and applicant was not willing to move their vehicle out of the lot every day, and some applicants were also ineligible due to the size of their vehicle, so for example, living in a large RV. So overall, the program demand was low. The second outcome was that employed individuals living in their vehicle felt part of the community, felt safe, and able to maintain their employment throughout the pilot. This was measured by participant satisfaction. Communication was frequent between program staff and participants, but a follow-up satisfaction survey was also distributed to gather overall experience. Participants were asked to rate how easy the program was to use, how safe they felt using the program, how affordable program fees were, and if they would register to the program again in the future. Participants reported that they were satisfied with all aspects of the program, and there were no participant complaints throughout the pilot. The third outcome was that the number of overnight parking violations issued was low. This was measured by the enforcement impact. A security company was hired to patrol the lots twice per night, and the company was responsible for reporting any suspicious or criminal activities to the RCMP and to check that participants were safe. There were no reported incidents during the pilot. Nightly patrol reports were sent to CSD as well as bylaw services, and the number of unregistered vehicles parked overnight in Safe Park lots was also tracked. Due to limited staffing, the bylaw services team was unable to enforce overnight parking. A need for additional signage and documentation at Save on Foods was also identified, and bylaw services and CSD worked with community partners to amend parking signs and the related legal agreements. Overall, increased enforcement was needed. There were 3 challenges which we suspect may have impacted the success of this year's pilot program, and they relate to public health restrictions, bylaw operations, and seasonal workforce. A spike in active COVID-19 cases in the spring led to new restrictions that were implemented in June, which was around the time of the Safe Park program launch and our enrollment period, which we ended up extending in response to that. Bylaw services operational plans were also amended during the pilot to accommodate some staffing challenges, and with reduced capacity, the team was unable to complete regular proactive patrols of the Safe Park lots. We also learned that the signage and community partner contract needed to be changed to support transparent and clear enforcement procedures. And it's also important to note that Safe Park is the first program where the town provides proactive investigations on private property. As a result, new enforcement processes needed to be created and tested. There were also more jobs advertised in 2021, including jobs with staff accommodation, than in 2020. This may be the result of fewer seasonal job seekers. As the Safe Park program was created to support Canmore's seasonal workforce, participation rates may have been impacted by low seasonal workforce population. So I added this graph here to highlight the lack of available employees in Canmore in recent months. The numbers here represent the available jobs posted on the Job Resource Center online job board from August 4th, 2020, when this job board was created, to October 13th of 2021. The purple lines show the total number of posted jobs in Canmore, and the red line shows the proportion of these jobs which offered staff accommodation. Summer seasons are outlined in the blue boxes on each end. The Job Resource Center recently commented in the Rocky Mountain Outlook that there were fewer international workers in Canmore in 2021 than has ever been experienced before. If we compare this to summer 2020, you can see that the job vacancies in the graph were indeed quite a lot higher. So low participation rates in the Safe Park pilot this year made it difficult to evaluate the program's impact. It remains unclear whether Safe Park participation rates were affected by ongoing pandemic and a reduced seasonal workforce. As the world continues to open back up, administration is anticipating a higher proportion of seasonal workers in 2022. A pilot in 2022 could incorporate learnings from the first pilot, which may increase program participation rates. The challenges associated with individuals camping on municipal lots are not going away. We have been connecting with the resort communities of Squamish, Tofino, and Ucluelet, who share this observation. In these Western communities, different housing support programs were piloted this year for residents living in their vehicle, and we plan to continue meeting with these communities to understand the impact of their programs. My role will continue to involve working with local community partners to assess the continuum of housing needs within the Bow Valley and to support local initiatives that assist individuals along a housing continuum. If the Safe Park program and the housing evaluator position are approved in 2022, I will return to Council in late 2022 with a final evaluation of the Safe Park program and recommendations for next steps based on this work. Thanks so much. Anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Eichelboom. Appreciate your presentation and very thorough, giving us the history and the current state, so I really appreciate that. Look to Council to see if there are any questions. Councillor Ma.
Thanks for the presentation, Ms. Eichelboom. Quick question. In Squamish, Tofino, and Ucluelet, can you give a little quick summary of how they've tried to address their programs? I'm just curious for context.
Yeah, totally. So they were very excited, I'll say, first of all, just to hear that we were piloting a Safe Park program because no one else that we've talked to has done it this way, but they were really interested to see how that's been going. So collaboratively, it's been really good to compare notes in general. But what they have been doing in other communities is, well, first of all, what's interesting is we didn't really see an increase in people living in their vehicles this year, but in other communities out west, with the communities we spoke with, they've seen explosions in numbers, in recent years. So that to us kind of just says that it's difficult to predict what it will look like year to year, what this part of our community, looks like. So that was just interesting to note as well. But they are piloting different programs, including systems like temporary use permits, and they did one in, I think this is in Ucluelet, where temporary use permits were purchased by businesses, and they purchased them in anticipation of their workers, seasonal workers using these permits. And they actually had several applications to the permitting system and some indicated interest from residents, but in the end, only like 5 permits were used. So they kind of, bulked up on these permits, and then they weren't used in the end. A lot of people continued to camp illegally, and that's been the trend in all 3 communities of Squamish, Tofino, Ucluelet that we talked to, is just that, it's continuing. Some other, resources that were offered in Squamish were taking the approach of just trying to like make sure that there were enough resources for people who were going to be camping. And so a large part of that was making sure that they could kind of manage a human waste issue, or like, you know, trash being left behind, like just kind of leave no trace principles. So this year, that's kind of what they targeted. So it's kind of just, there's several, I want to say, Band-Aid solutions that are being proposed, and then also just different, you know, permitting styles being tested to see, okay, what will people use if this will help them stay or work here. So yeah, mostly temporary use permits where it's for 6 months or something like that, and people have to apply either residential or business. Some communities just went through their businesses, and then others, I talked to Valemount as well, another small community, and they did it all through residential properties actually. So people could essentially rent, you know, a portion of their property to one person. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Councillor Mara.
Actually,
Okay,
thank you.
Okay.
thank you. Councillor Graham.
Two was answered, but I've got a little bit of a follow-up. I just wanted, I chose to live in my van for 5 summers. It was some of the best times of my life. Is it? I think you mentioned that we didn't see Vanmore just disperse throughout the community, and I think I would concur with that statement. Mm-hmm. Over the coming years, are we expecting more and more people to arrive in their vans and live that lifestyle? And would you like to see the program continue in 2022?
It's a great question, and as a side comment, I also have a van that I do not live in, but I love to recreate in, so I totally share the same sentiment, and van life is very fun. But yeah, I think it's difficult to predict what it will look like in the future. You know, as I kind of mentioned briefly earlier, is we had these great numbers out west this past summer, and here our numbers actually declined from 2018 and 2019 based on our lot counts. So there is some unpredictability around that, but I don't think, you know, the problem's not going away of how do we support people who are living in their vehicles. It's always going to be a challenge until we have a program that works. And I would like to see the pilot happen again. That's what administration would like to see happen, is to have another chance to, with the right, you know, checks and balances in place this time after incorporating our learnings from the 2021 pilot, see how we can change things. And we'd evaluate the program the same way next year, and we'd look for the same outcomes, and, you know, want to see that consistent enforcement piece, and, you know, see that people are able to maintain their employment and the program works for them. But I believe personally that with, you know, the affordability issues, I don't think we'll stop seeing people choosing to live in their vehicles as a result. But Ms. Brown, would you like to add to that question as well?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kayla, for your response. Excuse me, I just wanted to let you know that we are also going to be working with the Economic Development Department, because they're also looking at making sure that there are options for our seasonal work staff. So Safe Park might not be the answer, but what we will do is we will pilot it again, see if we can get a really good idea and evaluate it based on that, and also look at different options to explore.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Eckelboom. So I just want to understand, when you speak of the temporary use permits that were taken out by businesses, were these businesses in Squamish?
Ucluelet.
Sorry, Ucluelet. Thank you. Were they basically taking, I'm trying to understand this, were they, were they relying on the public to house their staff instead of housing their own through this temporary permit system? Like on the municipality? Like, that's what I'm trying to understand. Was this sort of like or was it to vouch for a staff member? How, like, I don't think I understand the mechanism.
Yeah, Ms. Brown was at this last meeting that I missed, where they
So for
went into the
instance,
details.
our program required you to be employed in Canmore.
Yeah.
So that's why, is this sort of another way of ensuring that the van dweller was an employee in Canmore? Is that the point? I'm sorry.
Yes, I think I understand your
Yeah.
question. So the relationship was with the business instead of the individual, where with ours, the relationship,
With the
our town
individual.
relationship was with the individual. So with the relationship with the business then did the
Took
eligibility
responsibility.
process and took responsibility for who was going to be staying there.
Yeah.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, the
So
businesses
there was
applied for the
somebody in the
permits.
end that was taking, that was
Yeah.
vouching or taking responsibility for that individual. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for the question.
Councillor Faubert.
Thank you, Ms. Eichelboom, for your presentation. The issues that arose with agreements with stakeholders and signage last year, are you confident that those have been resolved and for next year's program, all signage is ready to go?
Yeah, so this is something that we've been working and we continue to work with bylaw services on, as well as the private partner. And so, yeah, we're continuing to work with bylaw services on the enforcement piece. Enforcement has now begun in that lot where the signage was identified. However, now some of the vehicles are migrating into nearby lots, and so we may have to address this again in other lots, but in the particular lot where we saw the issue, the enforcement has now been effective now that the new signage is in place, and the legal, understanding is now there. So that lot I'm confident in. It will just be kind of watching and monitoring how how it's dispersed and how the movement might occur across other lots, and if we need to then look at other signage with other private partners.
Councillor Ma.
How was resident feedback with regards to the Safe Park program?
Yeah, so there was an open house, I believe, in 2019, and the feedback was overall quite positive. There were some concerns, but we had no negative feedback during the pilot this summer. There were some concerns prior to the pilot being launched from certain neighborhoods, but that was before lots were actually decided on, and in the end, the lot of concern was not used, and there was consultation with, there was meetings with the concerned individuals, and understanding was reached. But that lot didn't end up being used, so it was kind of something that didn't need to be.
It was a moot point. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor McCallum.
Thank you. Did we keep track of how many complaints? Because council did receive emails from members of the public where people were camping in their neighborhood, et cetera, on the street, et cetera.
Yeah.
Did we keep a cumulative total of the number of complaints we received about that type of activity?
We do have, Ms. Brown might add to this,
Yeah.
but we do have through bylaw services, they track the investigations based on complaints,
Right.
and then how many tickets or warnings are issued. So they have
Gotcha.
tracked that throughout each summer month from this past year, and I think it goes back every year before that. But,
Gotcha.
yeah, there's numbers for the summer
So
season.
do we have numbers for this past summer then?
I don't have them with me
Okay,
right now, but
all
we
right.
do have them.
Perfect.
Yes, I can always connect you.
That would be
with-
great if you could send those out.
For
Thank
sure.
you.
Councillor Hillstead.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. With regards to the program and the participants, did they stay throughout the whole summer? Was it, just a couple of weeks here and there, or how did that look just from a use?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the participants that we did have, they stayed throughout the duration of the program. So we actually ended up extending the program for one participant who didn't have alternate accommodation lined up yet, but their employment was continuing past the program end date. So they were really keen to remain in the program, and this one individual wanted to stay actually year-round. So there was some demand for something greater than just a summer use program, but yeah, there was consistent use, and everything did run smoothly from an operational, from staff to program relationship. So yeah, they were really happy, and there was interest also before the launch of the program, and even in the year prior to the official launch of the program, when I came on to CSD, there was still, people reaching out about the Safe Park program, despite it having been canceled that summer. So people were on it, waiting to apply and interested in more details.
Thank you.
One question I have is, did you have any sense that the environmental conditions played a role in the number of Safe Park users, like with the smoke, and whereas maybe the coast, I think the coast had a little bit better situation. Do you get any sense of that, or you don't have enough information?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I I could see it having an impact potentially, because everyone who I know who lives on the coast this summer did, echo that, oh, the smoke's not so bad here. So, I wanted to go out there for a while. So yeah, it's possible that it just may have not been, desirable during that time to be here. Because when you are living, in your vehicle, you may not have AC in your house or air quality conditioning. And we also see this impacting through other programs that I work on with homelessness supports. That was definitely a factor this summer with, people looking for shelter during the smoky months. So it definitely plays a role in some regard, I think.
Councillor Faubert.
Thank you. With what's proposed in the operating budget currently, are you confident that we have the bylaw resources next year for enforcement? Because I feel that enforcement might not just be keeping track of who is in the program, but who's not in the program and still parked there.
Yes, yeah. Ms. Brown may want to add to this question, but I will say that I think a big piece of the enforcement this year was learning from our signage. And although we thought we'd done the due diligence and we'd looked into it prior, something still came up, once we got out there to enforce. And it was, a process of going through legal agreements, and that took a bit of time. So yeah, we definitely learned something about our signage, and we do feel equipped now that we know what the wording is. And, even going back into the report on overnight parking on municipal lots that Travis did in 2019, there is talk about the language being different now. So even when we look at the traffic use bylaws, the camping and temporary living in a vehicle is all kind of new to navigate from a legal standpoint. So I think that the signage will address it, but I'll let Ms. Brown add to that.
Ms.
if
Brown?
she has anything to add.
Actually, I don't have much more to add. I think you covered it quite well. It's just that more the unpredictability of what next year will look like. Staff changes, other projects coming on to the town, just how the community feel is. But we did have quite a bit of learning from the 2021.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Mara.
Oops.
I got you.
Thank you, Ms. Eckelboom, for your report. I'm just curious of the was it 5 people that were in the program?
It was,
or vehicles?
Yeah, so it was less than 5, and we're just not reporting on the exact numbers to protect the confidentiality, because it was less than 5.
That's fine. And of those people that were enrolled in the program, do we know how many were offered employee housing?
Yeah, I don't...
Is there any information that way?
Yeah, none of them had access to employee housing, and our area of who we were letting into the program, primarily we wanted it to be here for Canmore residents, so we thought we were going to get quite a lot of outreach and a lot of people applying to the program. So we said, okay, well, first we'll go and look at people who work immediately in the vicinity, and then we'll open up kind of a second tier of enrollment to people outside of Canmore directly. So we ended up not having to deal with that because we had less than 5 participants. But yeah, there was quite a few interesting reasons that people declined being part of the program, and I don't know for sure if staff accommodation played into those cases, but some examples were, oh, my friend let me park in front of their house now, or I found a place, like a rental unit. So yeah, not particularly with the participants, so yeah, we're not too sure, but like Ms. Brown said, we are continuing to work with economic development, because definitely that seasonal workforce and accommodation piece is something we really want to understand. So, yeah.
And did we keep them not confined, but allowed in one area, or did we disperse them into different lots?
Yeah, we were going to initially fill up one lot at a time, and we still did it that way. So just to kind of keep things easier to monitor. And we also, chose one of the lots that wasn't going to be so busy, and then start from there. So in the end, we actually reduced the capacity of each lot even further, and the whole program really, we were going to have 50 spots originally and went down to 20. So we had to accommodate the vehicle spacing, so that took out a stall in each lot. So it went down to 5 in each lot anyways. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Graham.
What would the impacts be if we didn't run another pilot next year? If we did nothing? What would the impacts of that be?
Yeah, I think it's hard to predict, as Ms. Brown said, but I think I'll let Ms. Brown answer this question. She can answer this very well.
Ms. Brown.
No pressure.
Thank you. it is difficult to predict. We won't know what it would look like if we didn't do this program, but I can say that we started this program because of the situation. So there was a circumstance. Quite a few vehicles were parked behind the Save on Foods and beside the Elevation Place. And because of that, we realized that some of those individuals are working in our community and that the number of vehicles is becoming unmanageable for our community. So this program was created as a response to that situation.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Ms. Eichelboom, for your presentation and all those wonderful answers to your questions.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks. We'll now move to item D2, the Family Resource Network COVID-19 relief programs. And before you start, I'm going to have to ask you how you pronounce your name, because I don't know.
So this is my husband's last name, and I always butcher it. So if I had a French accent, it would be de Montigny, but I say de Montigny.
Okay.
Of the mountains, yes. So fitting.
It's very appropriate for our location. Ms. de Montigny.
So you say it better than I do.
There you go.
All right.
So welcome whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Krausert and members of council. My name is Christine de Montigny, and I am the supervisor for the Family Resource Network Business Unit. So I've come to you today to give you some information about the COVID-19 relief programs, but I also want to give you some history of how the Family Resource Network came about, as well as walk you through the Family Resource Network provincial model and how the town of Canmore fits into this model. So once the town of Canmore received notice that the Parent Link services would no longer be available beyond March of 2020, the town of Canmore applied for funding through an expression of interest process to provide services through the province and the Family Resource Network model. The Bow Valley Parent Link service, just as a reminder, or maybe some of you guys haven't heard of the Parent Link services before, was a single agency offering services across the Bow Valley for families with children 0 to 6 years of age. It was provided as an early childhood development program and service. The Family Resource Network is made up of 3 agencies providing services across the entire Bow Valley. This service is for families with children 0 to 18 years of age. It's a prevention and early intervention service and provides child and youth development programming and parenting supports. So this presentation will mainly focus on the municipally funded programs. However, I wanted to share with you a bigger picture of the Family Resource Network and how the town of Canmore fits into this model. It's quite confusing, the language that's used through the province. So they've used a hub and spoke model. So over the next few years, you'll be hearing me use this language of hub and spokes. And I will use this each time I present to council so I can create a clearer picture for you. The province funds Family Resource Networks services as part of a regional network. Throughout the province, there are a number of regional networks, and Canmore as part of the Bow Valley network. The services are funded through something called the hub and the spoke model. Different organizations receive funding for different services. This is called the spoke service, and all spokes or services are coordinated by the hub. So the way that I remember this, or I tried to explain this, is that the hub is coordinating the services, and all of the spokes on the right-hand side there are doing the direct service delivery. So Canmore received provincial funding for hub services and 2 spoke services. The town of Banff also received funding for spoke services, and Closer to Home, which is a Calgary agency, received funding for a spoke service. All services through the Family Resource Network are available to families with children 0 to 18, across the Bow Valley, with the exception of Closer to Home, which provides home visitation services to families with children 0 to 6. So what does the Family Resource Network look like at the town of Canmore? So the Family Resource Network team is part of the Community Social Development Department at the town of Canmore and currently provides community with 5 core service areas. 3 of these services are provincially funded and 2 of them are municipally funded. In the next slide, I will provide a brief overview of the provincially funded services just to give you a complete picture of how these services fit in through the Family Resource Network. Later in the presentation, I will discuss the municipally funded services in more detail. So the provincially funded services, the hub is a centralized location that coordinates services across the Bow Valley. It's also a place where the majority of information and referrals take place. The hub collects and disseminates information for other family resource networks in our network area and is the main point of contact for agencies working in the Bow Valley with families. The caregiver capacity spoke, the second one down there, is building parent resilience by providing education. This position provides programs and workshops such as the Positive Parenting Program, also known as Triple P, the Practical Parenting Series, which is aimed to provide practical tools for parents. This position also works in collaboration with the Child Development Spoke to offer a mindful parent and youth workshop. The Whole Family Child Development Spoke offers services for children and youth and developmental programming. And it is programs such as the Girls Connect, which is a program to engage youth in the community, build their self-esteem, and create a positive, lasting relationship. The main service provided through this spoke is individual family consultations to support higher risk families with multiple parent and youth challenges. This service is also available for families with children 0 to 18. So an example of how a family might work through this system is they may contact the hub looking for support with child development. After being assessed by the hub, the family may be referred to a caregiver. The caregiver capacity spoke for a parenting workshop, and the child development spoke for an individual family support. Within these services, the family would also learn about other services offered through the Family Resource Network and the community agencies supporting families in the community. They would be referred to other agencies as needed. So the municipally funded services, the social connections position. So this position also supports children, youth, and families 0 to 18 years of age. Current programs offered through the social connections role is the Toys Together program, which is a popular drop-in program provided to families with children 0 to 6. They learn about child development, build those social connections with other families in the community while their children play in the play space. The Babies and Blankets program is also a drop-in program for families with children 0 to 12 months. It's an opportunity for them to connect with their peers and learn about community resources. The RAFT program, which stands for Recreation Activities for Teens. This is a collaborative program with recreation services, and it provides a safe space for teens to socialize and engage in physical activity. Community development is also part of this position. So they collaborate, this position, or the staff collaborates with a variety of outside agencies to support community development work. This aligns with the Community Social Development Department's strategic plan. These programs are ongoing and will continue into 2022. So the municipally funded service, the COVID-19 relief programs. So early on in the pandemic, we heard that families were struggling with childcare, school support, finances, and isolation, among several other concerns. This service was meant to provide relief during the pandemic for short duration childcare to address these struggles. The 3 main programs were created to provide the support to families. So these were available at no charge. The Free Play Free Time program is a child development-based program for 3 to 5-year-olds. Each session was an hour and a half long, and for some children, this was the first experience socializing with their peers. For some, it was the first time they had seen another child in many months. And the program was just running this morning, and it was one of the first times a child was dropped off ever without their parent. So I thought that was pretty neat. And then the Play Without Parents is also a child development program for 6 to 12-year-olds. And this program was offered for an hour and a half to 2.5 hours, depending on the day. So this program provided a safe place for children to go after school, on half Fridays when there was no school, and during the summer months. This program supported parents with their after-school childcare needs. This was another popular program and positive feedback from parents and children attending. When parents were surveyed early on, they expressed the need for school support and homework help. So the school support program was created to provide after-school programming for the duration of time, and now is transitioned to being offered virtually as needed. So this COVID relief programming will be ending in December of 2021, so in a month. We will be slowly winding down these services in the next month to support with this transition. I pulled a few comments from some of the parents that had their children attending the COVID relief programming. So my child did the program 3 times, and she always had a wonderful time and would look forward to going back. That was a Play Without Parents participant. After not being able to register for any programs this summer, Play Without Parents has been a savior for our family. We are so grateful for this program. This program is available. I am very happy with the programming and thankful to be able to send my child to a safe and positive environment. That was a free play, free time participant. We are so grateful to have access to this program when we needed it the most. As you can see from these comments and many others that I couldn't include, these programs and services were well used and have been impactful in our community. They supported families during these stressful times. They provided a place to go for children to go and parents to have their questions answered. Children had opportunities to gain and maintain social skills during a time of isolation. And parents had a safe place to drop off their child so they could manage some of the stressors in their life. These services have been available to families when they've most needed it. So I provided you with some stats in the briefing note, and I just wanted to provide some more detail on these stats. So the provincially funded services, and just as a reminder, these are registered services offered through that caregiver capacity spoke and the child development spoke. Even though this number is lower, this is a significant amount of families or individuals that have accessed these services. This number represents 125 individual parents or families that received our services through these 2 spokes since January of 2021. This stat could reflect a staff working with a family for 6 sessions. This family would be counted once. This could also be an 8-week course, and each participant counted once. The municipally funded service, the social connections stat there of 601. So these are, just as a reminder, the drop-in programs provided to families with children 0 to 18. This is a staggering number of parents and children that we have seen come through our drop-in program in 2021, especially considering these services have been most impacted by the health and gathering restrictions due to COVID. These families could come once or many times to these programs. Even though this number is quite high at 601, as we start moving back to typical operations, this number will increase. These programs are popular and in high demand in our community. The municipally funded service, the COVID relief programming, at 330. So just as a reminder, this is the programming for short-term respite care for children between the ages of 3 and 12. This number represents children only accessing this service. As you can see from these numbers, the program is well used and needed in our community to support families during the pandemic. As we close our COVID-19 response, we will continue to support families through both provincially and municipally funded services. Our focus for 2022 will be to continue to develop and maintain predictable and reliable operational services for families and children. As also noted in the briefing note, the space where we will be operating the provincially and municipally funded programs will be newly named the Family Connection Centre. We are in the process of getting a sign to identify this space. The space has changed quite a bit in the past 20 months, and I would like to extend an open invitation for you to come and say hello and meet the staff and take a tour of the space. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. de Montenay. Appreciate your presentation and those wonderful numbers you presented. I'm looking to council to see if there are any questions. Councillor McCallum.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I know that when we put our hand in the air for the COVID-19 response, it would have impact, but I don't think I realized the impact, so I'm a little emotional, sorry. Of the respite care, or sorry, of the COVID-19 response programming that your department has provided, could you tell me what is going to be the most missed going into, sorry, Ms. Brown, going into 2022?
Yeah, I definitely think all of the programming that was provided through the Family Resource Network will be missed. You know, and families are aware that this service is winding down, but it has been a great help for families, you know, being able to have that support, able to drop their children off so they can deal with some of the stressors that they're managing at this point. So I know that program will be missed, but I will definitely
That's the respite care one, or the, yeah. The
respite child care one.
For sure.
Yeah, it will definitely be missed. But I'll let Ms. Brown answer the rest of that because that is her area.
Because that's her job.
I think it'll be all missed.
Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Ms. de Montenay. You're right. All the programs will be missed. But I think what it did is it filled a really unique gap where we don't have any respite care in the Bow Valley. So this was something I think needed typically, but really the need was amplified during COVID. You know, especially our childcare facilities were closed for some time. Parents had different comfort levels with sending kids to daycare or to summer camps. The FRN did a really good job of trying to make sure that the camps were outside as much as possible, kept it socially distanced or physically distanced. They had air purifiers. They followed really strict health recommendations, which other daycare facilities do as well. But what they did do is they filled that unique space of temporary, short-term respite care.
Right. Thank you very much.
Councillor Graham.
As somebody who used Paralink through a difficult time in my life, just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Faubert.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm curious, how well received has the recreation activities for teens been? I know that's a new area in terms of programming for the Resource Network, and also a really challenging area to connect with teenagers in our community. As a former teenager, I apologize.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for the question. So the program has just started in the fall here. And they did get quite a good uptake for a program that is really new and for teens. So I believe they had 7 or 8 teens engage in the first one, which is pretty considerable. And I think that they have really good ways of engaging them through that physical activity and just that open idea of coming to skate or to swim in the pool and to play board games and that sort of thing. So I think that the program will increase as the word gets out, and that's often how programming increases, is especially with teens, is teens attending it and then spreading it out to their friends that they really enjoyed it. So I'm curious to see how that one takes off, but so far it's a really good start.
Excellent. Any other questions? Ms. de Montenay, thank you very much for being here today and providing us an update on this wonderful programs. Thank you. We're going to be moving soon we're going to take our break right away, but I thought I would share something that, as I was thinking of it, This council, a friend of mine noted, has been on the job for less than 4 weeks into this term, and already a zombie apocalypse has broken out. So well done, everyone. We're going to take a 15-minute break. We'll come back at 2:45. or do you want me to look at it and hopefully, they were doing it in real-time changes, and say it's okay to go? Okay.
Make it so, Kevin.
Okay, great. I will do that, and that way, the position will be posted later today. Okay. All right. Wow, that was a silencing bell right there. Welcome back, everyone. We're on to the second half of the meeting, and we're on to item D3, Canmore Community Monitoring Program. Ms. Brown, welcome.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. So good afternoon, Mayor, members of Council. As you know, my name is Lisa Brown, Manager of Community Social Development, or CSD for short. And I'm here today to share with you some next steps with respect to the Canmore Community Monitoring Program. So to start, I'm going to give you a little bit of history, some background on the Canmore Community Monitoring Program. In 1995, the town completed a growth management strategy, and as part of this strategy, a 20-year vision for Canmore was created. One of the pillars of the strategy was a recommendation of monitoring and assessing programs towards that stated vision. In 1999, the town of Canmore published the Threshold and Monitoring Report. Canmore was truly ahead of our time, and when we started this monitoring program, from what I understand, at this time, very few communities tracked indicators and tracked data and information. The 1999 report was primarily based on land and development. And although it did include some social, environment, and economic factors, not very many. The report was amended to take a more holistic view of community in 2001. It included indicators related to population growth and expanded indicators on social indicators, economic indicators, environment indicators, development indicators. In 2008, the report was framed around the 2006 Mining the Future Visioning Report and Council's business plan. The report evolved to include an average 5-year trend that was included in the 2010 Community Monitoring Report. The last published report was 2018, and the report was reformatted to a collection of fact sheets to support usability. In 2020, the Biosphere Institute, who's been contracting to produce this report, requested that the town review the program. Council directed administration to review the report with Biosphere. Unfortunately, Biosphere did not have the capacity to complete the review, and as a result, we contracted WCS, Engagement and Planning, to complete the review. In June 2021, Council accepted the Canmore Community Monitoring Review and Recommendation Report for planning purposes and directed administration to report back with options for a web-based monitoring program. So in summary, over the years, the Canmore Community Monitor Report grew from a 32-page planning and developing report to a 288-page compendium of information. This report was once cutting edge. It's now becoming a little bit dated. As part of a review, the Community Monitor Program, we surveyed staff, council, and a collection of community partners. We found that few referred to the monitoring report, but those who did loved it. Survey respondents commented that the report was difficult to navigate, that the information was outdated by the time the report was published. Many also commented that the information could be found in other sources. Those who liked the report, they commented that it was a comprehensive, one-stop overview of community. Respondents found trends informative and used the report to frame their projects. WCS Engagement and Planning was contracted to complete the review and to provide the town with recommendations for future direction. The methodology that WCS used for the review included determining the scope of the review, so how broad and how narrow to be, creating an evaluation framework based on this scope, using this framework to evaluate all our current community monitoring report indicators, recommending future indicators, and creating a data collection methodology guide. When determining the scope of the review, WCS used this diagram to explain different levels of monitoring. So there are community level, I'll use the pointer for the first time in my life. There are community level indicators that provide information related to community vision, strategic plans. So an example would be your sense of belonging, the percentage of residents who feel that they have a sense of belonging in their neighborhood. There are organization and department level indicators, which provides information on work-related operations. So for example, water consumption rates or number of artists contracted. And then there are project-level indicators that are very specific to a project. So for example, something like Bow Valley Bears that are removed, or the number of affordable services program participants. WCS explained that these levels of monitoring are layers and they're nested together, meaning that you can separate out each layer and report on each layer independently, but with the understanding that these layers are interconnected and impact each other. The 2018 Community Monitoring Report included all of the layers, but the information was presented all together, so which likely contributed to the report being a little bit difficult to navigate. For this review, WCS was directed by council and administration to focus on community level only. As such, when WCS reviewed and evaluated the current indicators, they removed all organization, department, and project level indicators. So the CCMR review and recommendation report organized the recommendations into three sections: framework and structure, which recommends how to present and frame the indicators; reporting characteristics and options, which provides guidance on accessibility of the information; and indicator review and recommendations, which outlines recommended future community level indicators. So more information on these recommendations can be found in the attached review and recommendation report. But for today, I will talk a little bit more about the characteristics and options recommendations. So the report outlined 4 recommendations related to reporting characteristics and options. The first was moving to a web-based reporting. In essence, we would be no longer publishing a community monitoring report document. Instead, we'd be managing an online monitoring program. This would allow for more dynamic reporting and allow us to one day expand the monitoring program to include those different levels of monitoring. such as organization, department, and project level. To do this, we would need to invest in a web-based reporting platform. The second recommendation is real-time data updates. Administration can create processes for updating and disseminating indicator data as it becomes available. To do this, we would need staffing resources who can collect information, format the information, and upload the information onto an online system. The third recommendation is to build on our existing culture of monitoring and reporting, where the monitoring program is used as a tool when developing work plans and budgets. To support this recommendation, administration would need to continue to explore the costs and benefits related to incorporating organization, department, and project level indicators into the monitoring report. And the final recommendation is alignment with community monitoring with our community planning, where the monitoring system is incorporated into our community planning, and the community plans are incorporated into our monitoring system. So to do this, administration would need a resource to disseminate monitoring information and collect program project feedback. So the 2022 CSDA budget includes funding to support Recommendation 1, web-based reporting. In June, Council directed administration to report back with options for a web-based monitoring program. The review and recommendation report outlined potential web-based platforms that we could use, the town could explore for the monitoring program. One platform, ArcGIS, stood out above the rest as most feasible and most cost-effective. I want to say a big thank you to Devin Bartley. He's the town's GIS engineer technician for walking me through the capacity, capabilities, and functionality of the ArcGIS platform. So the town has had an ArcGIS license since 2004. Over time, the town has expanded our usage of the system and incorporated various ArcGIS applications and databases. The town has experience using the ArcGIS system. ArcGIS is now closely integrated into the daily work of planning, public works, parks, streets, and roads, and EPCOR, engineering, and finance. Having said this, the town has not used the ArcGIS dashboard component of the system, which is what the community monitoring report would use. The way Mr. Bartley explained this to me is that ArcGIS is like Microsoft Office, and ArcGIS dashboard is like Microsoft Word. So the town has a lot of experience using Microsoft Office. We just haven't used the Word function yet, ArcGIS dashboard. Although the town has used other online applications from ArcGIS, for example, the town's online property information viewer. So administration has a good sense of the system's capacity. The property information viewer is hosted on the cloud and once configured requires little maintenance. The ArcGIS dashboard is included in our current license. The town already pays for this license. We are simply expanding the functionality of it. Additional funding is needed for a consultant to create the look of the dashboard and to configure the dashboard. This additional funding was requested in the 2022 CSD budget. Once the dashboard is configured, updating the dashboard should not be resource intensive. With the right procedures and an internal staff member, we can update the dashboard regularly. The dashboard will be hosted on the cloud, so will not require additional IT resources. CSD has added a part-time community evaluator position to our 2023 budget plan to support this work. I added this, excuse me, frog in my throat. I added this chart to summarize the monitoring report recommendations. So the first recommendation is web-based reporting, and the budget needed for this work is $12,000, and it's added in the 2022 operational budget plan and work plan. The second recommendation is real-time data updates, and to do this work we need staff resources and training, and budget for this work is included in the 2023 operational plan and work plan. The third recommendation is expanding the monitoring program to include other levels of monitoring. In 2022, administration will work on a cost-benefit analysis and present this to council for your consideration. Administration will create a budget and work plan based on council direction. And the final recommendation is alignment with the annual community planning. Administration will evaluate the other three recommendations first before looking at creating a cost-benefit analysis. So before ending today's presentation, I wanted to share with you some thoughts on why it's important to maintain and continue to evolve a community monitoring report. So the Community Monitor Program aligns with the concept of open government, which is a best practice for governance. The Government of Canada committed to open government in 2017 as a way of making government more accessible to everyone. This concept of open government has been adopted by many countries, states, provinces, and municipalities as a tool for effective public oversight. In fact, the Government of Canada promotes open municipalities, and to date, the Government of Canada Open Data website lists 62 municipalities across Canada that have an online open data portal. In addition, this concept of open government aligns with United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 16, Peace, Justice, and Strong Institutions, which advocates for public access to information as a criteria for ensuring accountability and inclusive institutions. So the Government of Canada has listed 6 benefits of open data, and they are support for innovation. So the availability of data that's machine-readable formats allows for creative mashups that can be used to analyze markets, predict trends, and direct businesses in their strategic investment decisions. Leveraging public sector information to develop consumer and commercial products, which allows businesses to use existing data in their business plans. Support for primary research provides data to support institutions with local primary research. Support informed decision-making for both policy developers and local consumers by providing a holistic view of data and community information. Allows for proactive disclosure and provides information to a community proactively without the need of a request for information, and increases government accountability and transparency. So by moving the Canmore Community Monitor Report to an online portal, and by continuing to work to expand the Community Monitor Program to include the other levels of monitoring, the town of Canmore will be cutting edge once again, and we will be aligning with best practices of open government. Thank you very much for your time. Can I answer any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Brown. I was very sad when I heard that the community monitoring report was going out the door, because even though it was cumbersome, I quite enjoyed it. It had great information, but this is even better. So I'm really excited to see this and we can get the real-time updates. So thank you very much for your presentation and providing us an update of where we're at. Do I have any questions? Councillor Graham.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any cost savings from going through the 288-page report to this more real-time?
That's a great question. So we used our the contracted amount that we had for the creation of the 288-page to review the recommendation report. So that money just kind of got transferred for the recommendation and the review. The cost going forward, there will be a bit of a cost savings depending on how we go forward. So if it is that we are contracting out the creation of a community monitor report, there probably won't be too much of a cost savings. But if we're bringing it in internally, then there will be a bit of a cost savings at first until we start expanding the community monitor report, and then we might need to expand the internal resources needed to it. But I think it's going to be, at the end of the day, more of a wash.
And I love the fact that we're using a platform that we already have a license for and an aspect of it that hasn't been used before. So, Councillor Faubert.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. I participated in the review process. I was one of those people who was a huge fan of the monitoring report. It led to such classics as there are more dogs than children in Canmore, as well as the population of winter athletes per capita. That's right. So I used the monitoring report and I came up with like crazy stories about our community, and we understood ourselves better. I'm wondering if there are any indicators that we're losing with this change that you think might be worth holding on to, or, is there anything that we're going to miss?
I think for year 1 or year 2 potentially, we'll miss the organization and department and project level indicators. So things like more dogs than children, or the enrollment of our public schools, or the number of people accessing the food bank. That's all very rich information. But we do have a plan to hopefully bring this back to council with how do we incorporate that in and make it a bit more usable. And if you look at the review and recommendation reports, there are some examples of how other municipalities have done this. And it is much easier to navigate, where you can kind of click on a strategic plan of council and then look at what are community level, and then what organization and community and project levels contribute to that. And then it kind of layers it a bit more.
Great question. Any other questions? Well, Ms. Brown, that must have been very clear because there's no other questions. So thank you very much for your presentation today. We're going to move now to item D4, Steep Creek Hazard Mitigation Program. Is it both Mr. Camille and Mr. Asarte? Oh, mostly Mr. Camille. Very good. Welcome. Mr. Asarte, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm here today with Mr. Camille, who is providing the vast majority of this presentation and has done the work to prepare it and provide an update on the Mountain Creek Hazard Mitigation Program. We have a couple of new councillors. It's been some time since our last update, so I've asked Mr. Camille to include some slides in his presentation to provide a bit of background information on the nature of the hazard we're dealing with steep creeks and debris flood and debris flow, as well as some information around the risk-based approach we take to managing those steep creeks and the significant hazards. We felt this update would be timely in light of where we are. It provides context for the large capital program that's currently underway, as well as the program information that you're reviewing as part of the Finance Committee meetings right now for the longer term program. So please use this opportunity as a chance to ask any questions you might have about the program, about how it's funded, about the projects, about any aspect of this. It's a technical topic, and it's been a number of years since we embarked on this, and certainly if you have questions, even if you've been part of it, others will. So really encouraging folks to ask any question that you might have. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Camille and
Thank you.
Have him provide the update.
Mr. Camille, welcome.
Thank you. So yeah, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm here to present an update on basically the Mountain Creek Hazard Mitigation Program that we have going, as Mr. Asarte just mentioned. So I will be discussing basically the program itself, as Mr. Asarte has mentioned, in terms of just a little bit of more background on it, hazards, and what the program is all about. Then I'll go into grants overview, providing a little bit of background on the different grants. We have lots of different funding sources for the different projects we have going. I'll provide also a summary of work completed to date. And then I'll go into the status of each creek, a little bit more details, and then I'll finish the presentation on Career Creek itself, which is our largest project.
You're going to be covering a lot of ground. I just want to ask right now, when we do have our questions, would you like us to ask them as they arise, or would you like us to save them till the end?
As they arise is fine by me. That works for me, sure.
Great.
Yeah,
thank you.
No problem with that. So yeah, 2013 event, just a little bit of a recap on that. So the June 2013 event is the largest recorded in the area. The 3-day rainfall in Canmore exceeded 250 millimeters of rain. In comparison to that, the average month of June, we see about 80 millimeters. So that rain caused devastating debris floods and debris flows with millions of dollars in damage. The photo on the left here is basically Coeur Creek at Highway 1. You can see the damage right after the event. And the photo on the right is actually the Canmore General Hospital. A little bit hard to see it right now. It's a little bit dark, but that was created because by Stoneworks Creek, basically. So it was a pretty scary event, which basically initiated this program that we're talking about right now today. Oops. So in terms of the different flood hazards that we have in town here, to explain this, I've got this little sketch here, and from left to right, basically, is it shows increased channel steepness, and also the concentration of sediment and debris in the different type of hazards that we have. So on the left side, we have the flood, it goes to debris flood, and then debris flows. So to put this into context, an example of where we could get a flood would be the Bull River, Spring Creek, Policeman's Creek. In terms of debris flood, we have Coeur Creek, Three Sisters Creek. Most of the creeks around here actually are prone to debris flood processes. And then when we go to debris flows, Stone Creek is one example, and also X, Y, and Z creeks, which if you're not sure where they are, I'll show that on a map a little bit further down the road here. So those hazards were assessed on each creek within the town of Canmore municipality boundaries, including a return period ranging from 1 to 100 year return to 1 to the 3,000 year return period. Then the risk on those different creeks were assessed. We assessed the risk to people and to infrastructure, and we focused mostly on 3 different metrics: the group risk of loss of life, then the individual risk of loss of life, and finally the economic risk. So basically the purpose of the Mountain Creek Hazard Mitigation Program is quite simple. It is to reduce risk of existing development to acceptable levels. And then secondly, it's to ensure that no new developments would create unacceptable risks in town. Those risk tolerance are actually established in section 3.5 of our NDP. Now I'm going to go to the grants overview. In terms of grants, a large portion of the grants actually are through the province, and it's through Alberta Environment Parks. We received a $19 million FREC grant for Coeur Creek. There's a combined $17 million grants from the ACRP program, and that $17 million is for Coeur Creek, but also all the other creeks in town. So it's a combination of 2 different grants. Federal government also provided quite a bit of funding for the projects. The first one we received was the New Building Canada Fund, a $14.5 million grant for Coeur Creek. And then the DMAF, which was jointly approved for the town of Canmore and DMD of Bighorn for $13.8 million, and this grant is actually just for the other creeks. It excludes Coeur Creek. I'm going to move on now to the summary of work complete up to now. So on all of Canmore's steep creeks that have development on their fans, they have been studied. So we've done the forensic analysis of the event, the 2013 event. The hazard and risk assessments have also been completed. In terms of short-term mitigation, we completed the short-term restoration of Three Sisters Creek Channel in 2013, and then following on that in 2014, we completed the Pigeon Creek Channel restoration, the Coeur Creek debris net and channel restoration, and also the Stone Creek Channel restoration and armoring in 2014. In terms of long-term mitigation, there's been lots of emphasis on Coeur Creek, obviously. So we did some work at Highway 1 Culvert in 2017. The design and permitting phases was completed in 2020, and then we're in the middle of construction right now. But also we completed a quite important project on Three Sisters Creek in 2018 with the lower portion of the creek seeing some rehabilitation with some stone pitching. And that's mostly the portion from the lower pedestrian bridge down to downstream of Three Sisters Parkway. And then finally, Stoneworks Creek Phase 1 mitigation. The design and permitting has been advanced quite significantly, and we had some material delivery completed in 2019 with the remaining funds from DRP of 2013, actually. And then in terms of other works that we've done, administration has been working on developing municipal policies for risk reduction. So part of those is MDP in 2016, the LUB in 2019, and also in 2020 we added a new section to the engineering and design guidelines to that feature a section on building in steep creeks hazard zones. Further than that, in terms of emergency planning, since 2013, we've been working on creating new plans or updating the emergency management plans that we had in place, created some new plans for each individual creeks. And then we've done also seasonal high water monitoring program that we started several years back now that we've been doing mostly between mid-May and early to mid-July. And this one is we're tracking the weather forecast, looking at the level of the Bow River, looking at snowpack, and putting all this together, basically creating a little bit of a summary for the town of Canmore, but also stakeholders and other municipalities are also getting it. We've also installed 2 weather station, one here on top of the Civic Center, another one in the Kerr Creek watershed that we're using the information for that monitoring program. And we've also formalized our annual spring inspection of steep creeks. So this is an overview of long-term structural hazard mitigation. So the green here that I can see now that we can't read very well, but it basically shows phases that have been completed or grants that have been approved for the different projects. So all the third row is all grants approved. So we've got funding from agencies for all the projects. In blue is what's been initiated or currently underway. So that's the Kerr Creek project. And in purple, it's what has not been started yet. Or has started but has stopped in some ways. So the details of each creek is coming up next year. So first up is Stoneworks Creek. It is located on the north side of the valley by Crosby Ranch. The results of the hazard and risk assessment indicated that the group risk and individual risk are low enough to be deemed acceptable in the developed areas affected by Stoneworks Creek. However, there is significant economic risk due to the large areas of developed land affected by this creek. Therefore, a long-term solution is required to address this risk and to restore drainage in the area. So 2 different phases of work were envisioned, originally speaking. Phase 1 mitigation was to protect existing development. The design of that phase 1 was completed in 2017.
I'm just going to interrupt you there,
Yep.
Mr. Councillor. Councillor Graham.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could expand on the economic risks to Stoneworks Creek.
Yeah, sure. So Stoneworks Creek is the one creek that creates over the last several years anyway, it's created a lot of nuisance flooding, so it actually goes outside of its current channel quite often. and impacts all the land around Palliser, all the apartment buildings around there. It also crosses the highway and impacts a large portion of TP Town, a large portion of Bow Valley Trail, the hospital. So when you actually look at that and you put all this together, anytime that Stoneworks Creek actually goes outside of its regular bank, it does create some issues for a lot of those areas, which that's where that economic risk is coming from.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Please continue.
Sounds good. So phase two of Stoneworks Creek was to allow for future development. The town of Canmore owned some land there, and there's also some private companies owning some land down there. So a second phase of hazard mitigation was planned. Both phases have now been combined together to improve construction efficiency. So we're just finishing right now basically the design of those two combined phases. And the construction itself is planned now to be basically the final design, which includes the two phases together. So the construction is currently scheduled for 2023 for Stoneworks Creek. And as I mentioned earlier, in 2019, a very large quantity of rock, large riprap, was procured and stockpiled on site. So that's by Johnny's Pit there for the people who know about that area. And the funding was actually, it came from the 2013 DRP fund, so that's the Disaster Recovery Program. That was the last bit of money we had left from 2013 event, and we had to spend it before it expired 6 years later. And that was the compromise we made with Municipal Affairs, who actually is the agency providing the money. So we used that $800,000 to procure that material. For Stoneworks Creek, we have two grants that have been secured, a federal grant of $2.2 million and also a provincial grant of another $2.2 million. Now on to Three Sisters Creek, which is located on the south side of town. Three Sisters Creek is actually fairly similar to Stoneworks in terms of group and individual risk that are basically low enough to be acceptable, considered acceptable in the developed areas. However, there's also significant economic risk due to the high likelihood of the Three Sisters Creek jumping its bank also in the area and impacting the existing development in town. Therefore, also, a long-term mitigation project is planned for the upper reach of Three Sisters Creek. So in 2020, a combined mitigation plan was developed with Three Sisters Mountain Village to protect both new and existing developments, as was included in their ASP submission for the resort center area. The proposed mitigation consists mostly of a series of berm that you can see here in purple. This mitigation project will be informed by any future development approvals, obviously. The construction is currently scheduled for 2024 in our current plan, and this time frame allows for the completion of the Clear Creek and Stoneworks Creek mitigation projects prior to starting this one here. For Three Sisters Creek, we have a federal grant of $2.8 million and a provincial grant of 1.2 that have been secured. And this one will need funding from the town and the developer to be able to move forward with this project. Next creek is Stone Creek.
If I may, one question on that. The shortfall on that project would be how much?
Total is 7 million, if I remember well. So 7 million, and then we have roughly 4 and something, and then I think in the briefing we had mentioned the required contribution by developer. I believe so. Can't remember by right now.
Thank you. Yes.
But yeah, it's approximately a total of 3 million that we need. And one of the reason is that usually the grants are actually not valid for protection of future development. So any future development needs to be, we need funding from the developer to be able to contribute to the project. We get funding from the province and the federal for existing development.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Any other questions on this?
No.
We're good, okay. Stone Creek. So Stone Creek is it's a pretty small watershed. It's beside Stoneworks, between Stoneworks and Silvertip Development. On Stone Creek, the group risk is considered to be acceptable. However, there is one parcel that exceeds the threshold for our tolerances. And economic risk is also at a moderate level. Therefore, on this creek too, there's a good justification to actually do further mitigation on this creek. There is a planned Stone Creek mitigation to reduce the risk and increase the public safety in the area. So for Stone Creek, we have a federal grant of 1.2 million and a provincial grant of $1.26 million that have been secured. And on this one, further funding from the town will be required. Construction is currently planned for 2025, so similar to Three Sisters Creek, we want to go through Cougar Creek, Stoneworks, and then likely Three Sisters, and then following up with Stone Creek. And it's also pending a subsequent approval from council in this one. We don't have any approval to go forward with this one as of yet.
Councillor Faubert.
Thank you. Does the Stone Creek mitigation protect future development or just existing development?
Good question. It's just existing.
Would we not be able to approach the individual parcel owner to contribute? Or is that, like in terms of like that individual risk, is there any potential to?
Good question. The one parcel is actually like a fairly big building. It's
it's a condo Pinnacle? Building. Is it the Pinnacle?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We've been in discussion with the, well, not the owner of that parcel per se, but.
The condo association?
Yeah, I think, sure.
Local improvement tax, anybody?
So philosophically, after the 2013 floods, we approached this as more of a community issue where we had risks come to light after the flood. There were risks that wouldn't have been known by residents when they purchased their properties. And often mitigating to get those risks to acceptable levels would be prohibitive on an individual parcel basis. And so we took the approach with the granting and funding agencies and with council and the community that for existing development, to bring it down to the threshold we consider acceptable, which is actually a riskier threshold than we would tolerate with new development. It's just to bring it to a point where we can say it's reasonably safe and not eliminate the risks, that we would bear those costs societally and as a community. And so we've taken that approach with the program. We have a target risk that we're aiming to make community equally safe to. And once we complete this program through 2028, that work is done. Anything for new development is scrutinized at a higher level, and the costs are borne by that development for their share of costs to ensure that risk is acceptable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great answer. Okay, XYZ. XYZ creeks are the little watersheds just basically above Peaks of Grassy development. And on those creeks, the group risk and the individual risk is also low. So it's considered to be acceptable. However, there might still be a business case to undertake structural mitigation there based on economic risk and also to improve resiliency of the community in the area. Therefore, a long-term mitigation project may be considered by council and administration as work on the other creeks move along. We do have a total of $450,000 in funding for those creeks already. And again, we're not looking at doing anything on these creeks for the next little while. That would be at the later part of the overall program. Pigeon Creek. Pigeon Creek is located in the southeast corner of the municipal boundary. Development of the Pigeon Creek fan consists mostly of a quarry and lands within the MD of Bighorn. Therefore, regarding the development in Canmore, the risks are acceptable and the economic risk is low. There is therefore no requirement for long-term mitigation as of now. However, there is a joint project that's currently envisioned with the MD of Bighorn that would further reduce the risk to the MD of Bighorn itself, to future development in Smith Creek, if they do happen, and to the Trans-Canada Highway. So currently in the program, there's $2.8 million earmarked for that project from federal grant, 1.9 from provincial funding, and there would be likely requirement for more funding from the town, from the MD of Bighorn, and the developer on Pigeon Creek to actually go ahead with this development. And similar to X, Y, and Z, this would be looked at later in the process here. And it would be informed by any future developments in the area. Now I'm going to get into Cougar Creek. So if there's any questions under creeks, you can ask them right now or at the end. So for Cougar Creek itself, I think we all know where it is. And on Cougar Creek, it's a little bit longer, so I'm going to be talking about the risks, same thing. I'm going to be talking about funding sources and our budget. Construction update. I'm going to spend most of the time on what's been happening out there. Talk about the winter shutdown, and also an update on the trails in the area. So Cougar Creek poses significant risk to loss of life, individual risk to loss of life, and really massive economic risk. In addition to risk to major utilities in the area on the fan, to the railway, to the Trans-Canada Highway, and to Highway 1A. Therefore, completing structural mitigation on the creek is still administration's top priority right now. In terms of approved budget and funding sources, we have total provincial funding of $29.8 million. Federal grant is of $14.5 million. And then the town of Canmore is contributing $4 million on the project for a total of $48.2 million for this project. I'm going to get into a construction update. However, just to frame this a little bit better, I'm going to be using rendering. I also brought a beautiful 3D printout that's by Miss Whitney here. Maquette? Yeah, it's a maquette, that's right. We can pass it around, or you guys can take a look at it after. Yeah, You can play with the water too. You can remove the water, fill it, empty it. Yeah. What? Yeah, you can just lift it. Yeah, you can empty it. There you go, it's gone. That's right. Anyway, back to this. I'm going to be using this overview here and a second one after to just, again, frame this so you understand a little bit better what we're looking at with the photos I'm going to be showing. So the structure itself is made of a rockfill embankment, so that's the main structure. The dam itself. And then we have the access road that goes from the downstream side all the way to the crest and down on the upstream side of the structure that will provide access once the structure is built to do inspection and also maintenance on the structure. There's the low-level outlet structure, and this is basically where the water will be flowing through permanently and coming out of this little structure here. And then there's the grouted riprap channel, just downstream of that. I'll have more photos on this. And then on the east abutment, we have the emergency spillway. So this is similar rendering, but looking downstream this time. So we have the emergency spillway again. We have the crest of the embankment structure with the access road on top here, and you can see it coming down on the front side. And then the intake. And that's basically where the water is coming through to go across the embankment structure itself. So in early July 2020, the contractor mobilized the site with bringing their equipment, site offices, and they started constructing the access road to get up to the site. And also one key thing that they had to do was to build a diversion channel to be able to divert the water away from the construction area when they were actually building the low-level outlet area. So with the water diversion established, blasting of the rock cut above the low-level outlet on the right abutment started. And this looked like this after the blasting was done. So this is a view from August of 2020. It shows a rock cut on the left side. And where the excavator is working on right now, that's basically the new foundation where a lot of structure was going to be built on top. But this context, that's the triangle represents where bedrock used to be, and that's the amount of rock that was removed. So that cut was anywhere between a few meters to about 25 meters high that was done. This photo here is the outlet structure itself, and that was started once that rock cut was completed. So the base slab was poured, that you can see at the bottom, and then the forms were constructed to pour concrete. You can see a section of the main conduit on the left side there, circled in yellow, and then the two bypass pipes, bottom right section here. This photo here is actually looking upstream, and it's showing the rock cut again on the left side and progress of the low-level outlet with several sections of the main conduit installed. And that was done over the winter 2020. This is a photo of the concrete intake structure that was undertaken in April and May of 2021. And that was the last stage of the formwork after completion of the concrete pour. Here's the nearly completed outlet structure and the grouted riprap channel. So that grouted riprap channel consists of very large rocks that are grouted in concrete that will protect that outlet and also protect the embankment structure from erosion and scouring whenever there's a lot of water coming out. Here's an overview of the work in May of 2021. This was done by a drone. And In here, you can see the water diversion channel at the bottom section. The low-level outlet is in the middle there, in the concrete encased here. On the left side is the outlet structure, and on the right side is the intake. And this photo is, but basically, just going to go back here for a sec. So once all the work around the low-level outlet and the intake was completed, now we need to divert the water into that low-level outlet so we can actually do the remainder of the work. So to be able to do that, we had a second phase of water diversion, which was basically diverting the water now straight into that low-level outlet. And this is what is being shown here. And that was done in June of 2021. Since then, the water has been flowing through the low-level outlet, and that's where it's going to be flowing on for the next several years now. Here you can see a section of the central core wall that is made of sheet pile. You can see down the left side here. The sheet piles are being keyed into the bedrock to provide a very strong foundation. And then concrete is being poured basically between the sheet piles and that excavated hole. That key trench excavation goes down all along where the sheet piles are being installed. And then you can also see here the deep excavation, 15-meter excavation below creek level, all the way down to bedrock at the bottom of the creek. And at the bottom there, there's also the same foundation excavation that's being done. Now, an overview of the project from last month. This time it's actually looking upstream. And here you can see the emergency spillway in construction. So the blasting excavation of the spillway will provide most of the material for the construction of the embankment structure itself. So whatever is being removed from there is being piled up on the other side at the bottom there, creating that barrier. You can also see a little bit here that diversion channel. And then there's the outlet structure with water flowing out of it. And then the grouted riprap channel here. And this is an overview taken actually last week. And now it's actually looking downstream. And you can actually see the intake on the right side here with the large debris rake that's basically preventing debris from entering into the intake. Divergent channel is, you can just see it a little bit here. And then you can see a portion of the sheet piles that have been installed just beside that low-level outlet here. So those were the photos. Now, in terms of work coming up next, well, there's not much. We're going to be doing a winter shutdown for the winter of 21-22. One of the main reasons it's quite hard to place a large quantity of fill material and do good compaction. So it's good timing to do that. So the site has been secured and winterized for the winter. And the contractor has demobilized most of its construction equipment from site. However, the site offices, CCANs, construction material, everything is still on site right now. And then the contractor will have some form of site presence. They're delivering propane, cleaning the road, clearing the road, and a few other things. We're doing installation of electrical up there right now, a few things like that. In terms of trail access, the parking lot and the pathways along the creek will remain open as they are right now. The Horseshoe, G8, and Montane are also have been open throughout construction. They will remain open. However, still no access to Crew Creek Canyon this winter. There's all the equipment is out there, massive excavations, potential for rockfall hazard. So we don't want people to go through there. But a big news for the community, that's the question I've been asked the most probably on this project. Are you going to open up Lady Mac Trail? Yes, we are. November 20th, this weekend, we will be opening up the trail. So that will be open for the winter shutdown only, and will be closed again once construction restart. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Camille. Very, very informative. Some of it brought back memories.
Yes.
It's obviously a very hot topic between 2013 and the ensuing years. And so thank you for your and Mr. Asarte's persistence and carrying forward with the project. It's so important to the community, all of those aspects. Just a clarification on one thing. I know we originally had a steep creek and hazard policy. Did that then get incorporated into the MDB or LUB?
LUB.
LUB? Okay.
Yeah,
That's where it went. That's where it went. Okay. Thank you. Opening up to questions, Councillor Ma.
What's the service life of that structure?
So the design life is 100 years.
Okay.
And then what we've done too is we've tried as much as possible to incorporate design elements that are somewhat easily refurbishable in the future, or incorporate ways that few different things can be changed, so the lifespan is actually increased.
Right. Awesome. Thank you.
Councillor Faubert.
Thank you. Just been watching what's happening in British Columbia this week. It kind of made me question whether or not we could get 250 millimeters of rain in November. Is that something like, are you guys looking at what's happening there, and are you reconsidering the potentials for what we could be faced with in terms of climate impacts and extreme weather in the future?
Yeah, I mean, we've all been following, I think, what's happening in British Columbia the last few days here. In terms of, could this happen here in November? From the last few presentations we've had on climate change, and we've been in touch, when was that, like about a month ago, with the University of Saskatchewan Cold Water Lab and things like that. And it doesn't appear that it's very credible for the area here to receive that much rain in November, but who knows? Things are changing. One thing we're doing is, anytime we have a new study being done, we're definitely trying to stay on top of the latest climate change. And there's been some changes, for example, between the 2013 reports and the latest one that we did in 2018, incorporating some new information on climate change.
How do you predict unpredictable weather?
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? That seems to be all. So is there anything else you wanted to add?
Just on probability of an event happening now, the other factor that, I shouldn't mention this, works in our favor is that it's really temperature sensitive. So big parts of the catchments are up high altitude, and so with the weather monitoring, we're able to see the freezing point. So if we get 250 mils in the valley bottom, it's not problematic unless we're also getting it up there. So that's why the June timeframe, May, June, tends to be the time you get heavy rain plus warmer catchments plus snow melt happening all at once.
Yeah.
And interestingly about this, I had a call from the Alberta River forecasting team actually yesterday to discuss what was happening in Canmore, because we have a lot of data and we're here. And they were quite curious to know if our creeks were flowing and how much water we're getting. I was like, no, we're good. It's snowing. It's raining in town, but snowing up high, at, above 1,600. So, yeah.
I did hear on like the CBC coverage, there was a number of expert interviews on the debris retention structures and debris flows. And I was just like, bring it. Like, we're right here. We have the expertise. We've done this. So I'm sure we're going to get more calls.
Maybe. Thank you.
Councillor McCallum.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a statement, but I've heard from, that in the spring when you put your reports out twice a week, people in construction are quite interested in them. and they're quite grateful for them, and I just wanted to pass that on.
Yes, we're looking at doing a special version for contractors.
Well, I think
starting
it helps
next
them
year.
understand what's coming, and it helps
Yes.
them understand the groundwater and what
Groundwater,
they're digging
for
into,
sure, yeah.
and when a good time might be to do that. So
Yes.
it's having more effect than you think.
Yeah.
Seeing no more questions, Mr. Camille, Mr. Asarte, thank you very much for your update and the information today. Very much appreciated.
Welcome.
Okay. All right, so don't get too distracted by that right just yet, because we're moving on to item E, which is councillor updates. And so this is a notice of what is to come. I hope that you've all taken a look at item E in the agenda package. What we are expecting is that prior to the Committee of the Whole, and just need to remind myself if there's dates there. Ms. Hyde, do we normally get, do you still send out a reminder, and how long ahead of COW is that reminder? Oh.
Thanks. So the Committee of the Whole is the third Tuesday of the month, and the agenda package goes out the Wednesday the week before that. So I send an email reminding you, I give you 8 days notice to have it in the day before the agenda package goes out. So it's the exact week before is when it's due, the Tuesday before, so the second Tuesday of the month, and I'll send you an email reminder the week before that.
And you can see in other, thank you, and you can see in previous agenda packages, samples of what other councillors have done, and there's guidance here. It's not to reiterate every single thing that you did over the past month. I saw Joe on the street, and then I met so-and-so in the grocery store. No, it's not it. But really, you know, what are some items of public interest? The committees you sit on, that's really important information to share at this table, these tables, because that's, each of you are council's access point into those bodies. And so that's a very important sharing right there. And if you have nothing to report, don't feel afraid to say I have nothing new to report, because why waste your time or our time if it's just going to reiterate something you've already shared before. Everybody's got homework. There's been a little bit of a break for the current councillors, but every month you'll be expected to submit these, and I thank Ms. Hyde for her reminders, because they are very much needed. Yeah, so that's very good. Is there any questions or comments around councillor updates? Either additional points from those who have done them before, or questions for those who have not prepared them? All right, it's clear as mud. Excellent. So thanks for those guidelines. We'll now move on to item F, administrative update. And we'll just go section by section. And if there's a question, go ahead. Oh. Mr. Soto, did you have something you wanted to? Okay. Never mind. All right. So we'll just go section by section. And just ring in if you have a question, otherwise I'll just move on. So any questions with regards to A or B, CAO's office or municipal services? All right, moving on then to C, corporate services. Any questions? No? Okay. Then moving on to D, municipal infrastructure. Councillor Faubert was first to the button.
I was hoping for a bit more information around the Stan Rogers stage. What condition did you find it in? And what are the potential solutions moving forward with the stakeholders?
Thank you for the question. I'm just scrolling down through the report. I will say basically that there is going to be a report coming to the regular council meeting in December with more information on the stage and a proposal for moving forward. We were at a point where, just given successive points of moving forward with repairs, finding something else that needed to be fixed, the overall rehab and repair number was getting big enough that we needed to kind of pause, take a look at other options, and consult with key users of that stage. We've done that, and the December report to council will contain more information on how we plan to move forward.
Thank you. Councillor McCallum.
I wanted to actually jump back to corporate services. It passed me by quicker than I could hit the button. I'm just curious with regards to the property tax recovery public auction, which in my 11 years is the first I've seen this happen. I noticed that only one item was sold, one parking stall was sold, and so the rest of them become the property of the town. What are we going to do with them?
Winter storage.
Gotta hit her button. That's why she's looking at you like that.
Thank you for that question. And Ms. Denage, who is the acting general manager of corporate services, thought there were no questions, so she went back upstairs. So I'm not sure if she knew the response to this one. I don't know that we have any plan to do anything with owning parking stalls. I think most of these are in the Solera development in Kananaskis. So we will be looking to try to sell them potentially back to existing tenants of that building.
Do you actually have to be a tenant of the building to own a parking stall?
No, you do not.
There you go.
Interesting.
And it has been brought to my attention that if you are an owner of a parking stall, you get a vote at an AGM of the condo board there.
If we just wait a moment, I think Ms. Denage can throw her voice.
Like God.
She might provide additional information.
She might provide. No, okay, that's interesting. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on corporate services or municipal infrastructure? All right. Section, scrolling down. Oh, that's it. Just brings us now to our council resolution action list. Does anybody have any questions on that? I know it's been significantly tidied up with the end of the last term and cleared off some of the long-standing ones. So these are fresher. No questions? All right. So that was item G. And there's no board and committee updates. No in camera. So with that, I will move that we adjourn this committee of the whole meeting. All those in favor? Carried unanimously.